What's going on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Kishiryu Sentai Ryusoulger, and this is on episode 16. The episode is called The Wish That Sunk into the Sea, and the episode overall was really good. So as far as things go, there were a number of things that this episode did. For starters, it introduced us to the mecha form for Moza Rex, so we finally got to see that. It also led to the defeat of a major villain, and it expanded the story and led to something very big with Kanalo and the Ryusoulgers, which we'll get to, which is important and something that seems relatively quick in retrospect as to how fast this occurred, but I'm not complaining in general, and I'll get to that later. So let me get started. So the episode is called Wish That Sunk into the Sea. The episode starts off with us seeing Gachirus talking to Crayon, and the thing is that he's like not pleased with Crayon, so he ends up trying to destroy him, but Crayon's made of a fungus material that when it's destroyed it actually it doesn't destroy it technically, it just kind of temporarily turns it into a slime-like substance that can easily be revived. And so that's exactly what happens. It's revived, and that leads to Crayon still existing. So even though it looks like he's destroyed, he's not really. So as far as things go in this episode, what can I say? This episode does not feature any Minosaurs. That's one thing I want to say up front. There is no Minosaurs featured. It's the first episode that does not have one. This episode, I believe it's the first one. Anyway, the point is that this episode has it where the Ryusoulgers are in their base, and actually Otto shows up in their base, and everyone's very friendly with Otto. And it's very noticeable very quickly that Otto has somewhat of a crush on Melto, which is interesting to see. And it becomes more and more obvious that there is that crush as the episode goes on, but there is an initial idea of that being the case because of a certain glance that she makes early on in the episode towards Melt. So that is important to consider. So what does end up happening in this episode is that at first, it's just the trio of Ryusoulgers, not the brothers. And what happens is that they're all being very nice to her, and also Yui meets her and finds out that apparently she's 123 years old, and so she's a little freaked out by that because she looks so much younger than Yui looks. And at the same time, we also learn that apparently they have the reason why she was able to find them was because they live in the sea. They have a strong connection to fish, and the fish have this strong sense of smell, and so since she's like them, she's able to smell the amino acids in their bodies, which allows her to track down different people. So that's what she actually used. Now at the same time, Kanalo is actually spying on them, and he does enter into their base, and that's important as well. But what does end up happening is that eventually, we call it, Gachirus ends up heading out to attack the area, and what happens is that what we actually see is that the Ryusoulgers end up trying to give Otto a new outfit so that she can wear something different than what she's been wearing, and so she wears something that's more modern, more contemporary with the times, not something that's more tribal like she was originally wearing. And so that's important, and she's very cute, she's very sweet, but we do end up seeing that she definitely has a fixation on Melt. What does end up happening as well is that Kanalo ends up explaining the history about the Ryusoulgers and about their underwater tribe, and how Moza Rex has strongly distrusted the Ryusoulger tribesmen because of the fact that in the past he was used as a means of attacking the other tribes, and he had such a great sense of distrust for this tribe that he basically gave up wanting to work with them because of his history, and so he basically told them for years not to trust in them. And yet clearly Otto and Kanalo do have some trust, a lot more so than Moza Rex. And what happens is that eventually Kanalo says that he's determined to make Moza Rex trust the Ryusoulgers, and so he makes that a big effort, and he tries to speak to Moza Rex several times to convince him otherwise. And even when he tries to speak to him the next time, it's still not working. Though what does end up happening is that Gotris gets into a battle with them. We end up seeing the Ryusoulgers end up fighting against him, and we actually get to see Kanalo and Ko working together using the Mara Mara and the Biri Biri modes to battle against Gotris, which is very, very cool because this time around it's not like they're enemies, they're actually very friendly with each other, and there's a genuine sense of trust and teamwork going on here rather than, you know, hey, we're both dealing with enemies because we both hate the same enemies, so we're just going to fight, but we're not necessarily like friends. In this case, it comes across as if there's genuine teamwork going on here, which is a very important distinction. So we end up seeing that. This episode does end up having it where he actually ends up having a finishing blow done to him, which makes you think that maybe he's defeated, but he's actually not. He's actually kept in this frozen state, which is used to kind of act as a defensive wall to protect him. And in other words, what that allows him to do is actually use the energy from that wall to essentially power himself up so that he has increased strength. And so that's what actually happens, and we end up learning this because apparently the Ryusoulger brothers, which is, you know, Towa and Bamba, end up learning this from Crayon, that's exactly what Gotris was doing the whole time, was that he was setting himself up for that. So what does end up happening, though, is that, what do you call it, Gotris ends up, what do you call it, he ends up using that ability, and the Ryusoulgers have to go after Gotris, and they end up going to his location, which Gotris eventually very quickly gains the extra strength, and he ends up growing in this case. And at that point, the Ryusoulgers end up forming the Five Knights combination. And the thing is that at first they're doing okay, but when Gotris goes underwater, they can't really do well enough underwater because he has such an advantage in the sea. So what happens is that Kanal has to convince Mosarex to work with the Ryusoulgers, and he's very resistant, but he does manage to convince him eventually to fight. And so what happens is that we end up seeing Kanal use Mosarex to take the form of Kishiryu Neptune, which is the mecha form of Mosarex. And unlike, and he's very similar in a lot of ways to how Tiramigo works, in the sense is that he has a full body already formed, but he has two different forms, one being a full-on mecha and one being a and one being a Dino Knight. And so he's very similar to that. That's the best equivalent you could say right up front. So they're very similar in that sense. However, unlike Tiramigo, where he is more often seen with lots of different combinations, let's just say this much, Neptune doesn't have as many, but he's still very important. So what we do end up seeing is that he manages to battle against Gotris and manages to defeat him, which is very important because this is actually a pretty quick defeat, to say the least, for a major villain so far. Because again, Tank Joe lasted 6 episodes, Gotris only lasted 3 episodes. Now, as far as Wiseru, he's still going to come back. We'll get into that, but I'm just saying that up front. But anyway, what does end up happening is that after Gotris is destroyed, the Ryusoulgers end up speaking to Kanalo, asking him whether or not Mosarex trusts the Ryusoulgers. And basically what happens is that Mosarex told him that he was foolish for making Kanalo and Otto believe that the Ryusoulgers were bad now just because of his history. So he's willing to give them a trial period now where if they can continue to prove that they are worth trusting, he will truly trust in them and believe that he can work with them. But as of now, it's still a trial period, meaning that he's not completely trusting of them, and he's not as willing to work with them as Kanalo is. So there is some trust, but it's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. Now what we do end up hearing as well is that there is a point where Otto officially confirms that she wants to have descendants with Melt, which is kind of a funny, silly moment, because in other words, again, what do you call it? Kanalo wants to find a wife, and Otto wants to find a husband, but the thing is that Otto's a little bit different because Otto's looks like a kid, and it comes across as more of unusual for her, even though she's really 123 years old, so it's an important point. Now, as far as things go otherwise, not too much else is shown in this episode. However, in the preview for episode 17, what we do end up seeing is a couple of, two really important things. First of all, Weisel will return. That's one thing that's very important to consider, because again, he disappeared during he showed up in episode 14 briefly, and then he disappeared, and now he's going to be returning back in episode 17. So that is important to note. And again, he's the longest, I think is he currently the longest lasting one? He was there from 7 to 14. So yeah, he's been around longer than any of the others, but it's still important to consider how long these characters last. Now, what also is confirmed in this episode is that Canal is officially part of the team now. He is not going to be against them. He is not going to distrust them. He genuinely does trust them now. However, obviously, Moza Rex doesn't fully trust them yet. But what this does mean is that now they are a team and they're not enemies. What we do also see in the preview for episode 17 is that we will also see another combination for Kishiryu Neptune, which is going to be Spino Thunder, which is the combination of Dime Volcano and Moza Rex. So that combination will be introduced next episode, so look forward to that. And eventually we should, at a certain point, end up seeing Giganto Kishiryu, which I believe is the combination of Kishiryu Neptune and I forget the exact combination, like how it's supposed to work, but I believe it's the combination of Kishiryu Neptune, Kishiryu, what do you call it? Kishiryu, which is Tiramigo's combination, and I think also Dime Volcano, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it's supposed to be. But that combination has not been introduced, obviously, yet. But I'm just saying that up front, that is something to look forward to. Most likely, if I had to guess regarding things, I would imagine that combination might be the combination used to defeat, what do you call it, Weisel, if I had to guess right now. But again, I'm just taking a random guess. I don't know for sure if that's an absolute, and it could be entirely wrong, but I thought I would just bring it up just in case it does turn out to be the case. Otherwise, that's about it for me for this episode. I did enjoy it a lot. I'm looking forward to next week's episode, and just in general, I really am liking Ryusoulger a lot. It's really a good show so far. And as far as things go, for those that may be aware, for a while I was doing a lot of Kamen Rider stuff, and I kind of stopped with that because I wasn't really enjoying Geo, which is the current Kamen Rider season. I got about halfway through the season and I stopped. So as far as things go with Kamen Rider, I am going to be returning once 01 comes out, which is the next Kamen Rider season that's supposed to be announced. Like, we're supposed to get official images and information on it next week. So once we start getting information for Kamen Rider 01, I will start posting again about Kamen Rider, but as of now, I have nothing to post otherwise, so just keep it in mind. I'm just giving you guys that heads up here so that you know in advance that yes, Kamen Rider will be returning for me. It's just I'm not doing it now because I'm not really enjoying Kamen Rider Geo, so I want to let Geo finish off, and I will still be posting news updates for 01 as things come up, but as of now, until the official announcement is shown, I don't want to talk much about that yet, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, that's about it for me, guys. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I am Crazy Sam Wrestling 1, and goodbye, guys.